Please give him a hand of applause.
Thank you very much for inviting me to come here and share with you some of the research that I've been doing in the cross-field between finance and IT, and also looking at how IT is transforming business. And in the banking sector, we've been using IT for many years, actually for 4 or 5 decades. And one of the first areas in which IT was really applied was in the banking sector. So one should think that we know everything that's going on in that area. We've been using IT predominantly to drive down cost and to increase efficiency. And we do that pretty well. Right? So every year we would go out into the organization and look, so what are you doing? And then we'd go back and then we'd build a system and adding that to the organization. And that reminds me a bit of having a pot of water and then adding IT, meaning that you increase the temperature of that water with 1 degree every year. And that goes well for many years. So it's 55 degrees, everything is fine. It's 56 degrees, everything is fine. And then we add more and more IT, and then we get up into the 90s. And then I don't have to remind you, as being from Iceland, that something magic is going to happen when we reach the 100 degrees, right? And that's when we look into the water, these small bubbles of air are starting to come in there, and they are indicating that the using of IT simply to automate and to drive down cost in the business will no longer simply be a matter of doing business as usual. Something's going to happen. We're going to have a paradigm shift. And that's exactly the time that we are in these days, is that we are facing a paradigm shift, going from the water to the steam, going from IT being used to drive down cost and to make things more efficient, to a situation where it becomes digitalized, and everything we took for granted, everything that we thought we knew what it was about, no longer holds true. And that's exactly the time that we are in right now. And the next sector that is going to have the you could say, ironically, the loving care of IT and digitalization is exactly the finance sector. What I've been trying to do is to put these things into 3 megatrends, and you would see they would fit very well with some of our previous speakers. So the first one is that the business landscape is being transformed from one of retail into facilitating a marketplace. So my grandfather, he was a storekeeper. He would go out and he would buy from the suppliers, put the goods into his shop, probably do some reorganizing of the products, and then he would sell it to the customers. And that's exactly what banks are doing. You're taking a deposit from some customers, repackaging it, and then lending it out to people on the other side. Then I think that, Jason, you did so well in explaining exactly the move between product to service. So instead of selling what the product is, then sell what the product can do for your customers. So don't try to say these things about, I think, what Jason said about the account and what the virtues of the account was very nicely put, but that's not what people want. They want something else. They want what the account can do for you. So what are the services instead? The third megatrend that I'll address is going from ownership to renting. I'm actually so old that when I was in high school, if I wanted to listen to some specific music, I had to buy the album, right? And the album was pretty expensive, right? It would cost in the vicinity of 2 months of subscription to Spotify. And then I would have one album and there would be 8 tracks on it. It wasn't like I had 8 million songs. It was actually only the 2 tracks, the first one on the side 1, or say the A, and the other one on side B that I really found interesting, right? But today, I get access to millions of songs in subscription. I don't have to own the album anymore. So the word discotheque actually means a large collection of records. So having that was something that we really liked. So what we're seeing today is that there's going to be a decoupling of ownership and access. But let's have a look at it and see into the finance sector and see how that is going to transpire. And I liked what Frederick was saying in the beginning, talking about how mobile pay had become dominant in Denmark, Vips in Norway, and Swiss in Sweden. And they become dominant in each their market. And that happened really, really fast. So where it took 8 years for 1 million Danes to start using internet bank, and it took 18 months for 1 million Danes to start to use mobile bank, it took only 6 months for 1 million Danes to start using mobile pay. That's 4 years ago, and since then it has been a struggle between some of the major players on the Danish market, and now at the end we only have one winner. So mobile pay has come in, and we're seeing what they are going to do, because that doesn't mean that they have won. It's like they won the series and now they moved on to Champions League, because as we've heard, some of the other players are coming in. Somebody like Apple Pay is coming in, Alipay are coming in, and some of the others. And these things move pretty fast, so even though we think that the 6 months for a market penetration of 1 million was fast, then think about Pokemon Go. I think you got that in Iceland too, and that really happened kind of in a week or something like that. So you would see markets being transformed in a very short time, and you must be able to react within a very short time frame. But that doesn't mean that these things have settled, because there are other technologies coming, and you can see the yellow coin. The yellow coin is a Bitcoin, but that's not really what I want to talk about. What I want to talk about is the underlying technology, and that was only mentioned once today, and that is blockchain and distributed ledger technology. I think that I would say that in 2 years' time, this conference will be entirely about blockchain and distributed technology, distributed ledger technology. So I think that the impact of blockchain and distributed ledger technology on the finance sector would be similar to what the email has done to the postal services. Okay, I'll just leave it there, right? Go into YouTube, put in blockchain, and watch a few videos, YouTube videos about what blockchain can do for the finance sector. Let's take one of the other ones. Let's take Lending Club and Lendino. These are all peer-to-peer lending schemes. So the idea is, I don't know about you guys, but when I deposit money into my bank in Denmark, I'm a little bit disappointed over the interest rate that I'm getting. It's pretty low, right? And in Denmark we have actually a negative interest rate, so the banks, when they have to deposit money into the central bank, they actually have to pay a penalty. So then I was thinking, if I want to help them with this excess capital, I would borrow some money for a car. But then it was a whole different ball game. So they wanted 5 or 6% in interest rate of this. So I thought that was a bit stiff. But then maybe what you could do is you could match somebody, you know, that had money to spare, and then I would like to loan some of that money, and then we could meet midway. So I would be lending money for a 3% interest rate. That would mean that the person lending the money out would get 3% instead of nothing, and I would get it at half price, so I could borrow the money for 3%. And you see, that also means that even if the bank goes bankrupt, there would still be a contract between me as somebody who's lending and the person who has loaned me the money. But then what about credit score? Because credit score should be one of the first and foremost things that banks can provide. But there are competitors in the market that are trying to provide that, and Friendly Score is a company that gives you a credit score based on your Facebook presence. Right? So when I first heard about that, then I of course went in and put in my Facebook credentials, and it came out with a credit score of me of 8%. I'm maybe not 100% credit worthy, but I thought 8% was a little bit was very little. And then I was thinking, how do they measure that? That's probably where I check in and how often I check in and all these kind of things. And then I thought, I went to kindergarten with this guy called Lars. it's probably bad that I know him. He's really depleting my credit score here. So of course I had to call him up and say, you know, we can stay friends. We've been friends for 45 years, but we cannot go and flash that on the internet anymore. Of course, that's not what I did. Instead, what I did was I put in my LinkedIn and also my Twitter account, and then it came up to 42%, right? And probably that's a little bit conservative still. That does not mean that this will go away, right? This means that it's this kind of credit scoring is still in its infancy. I don't know in Iceland, but in Denmark I have the numbers, and there people come to the branches only every 6 years. Right, and that number seems to increase with 1 year every year, and I think that instead of being reactive and sitting in the branches and hoping that people will come to you, then maybe you can use these social media data to kind of identify people in need of your services. So we all know this on LinkedIn, where you get an update saying that this person is looking for new business opportunities. This means that, of course, he's been laid off and he's looking for a new job, and the social network is the place to go and help you find a new job. So, but why don't you use that to contact this person and say, we know you're going through difficult times. Maybe we should stop the heavy payoff on your loans until you come onto the other side and have landed a job again. The idea is that with all these services, that you're cutting off the middleman, and what you're doing is you are instead facilitating a market where there are some people with something, they have something they would like to offer, and you match with somebody who has something they want. Another example I'll give is mortgage loans. So mortgage loans in Denmark is a pretty old invention. It came into existence in 1797. And that's because Copenhagen burned in 1795, and nobody had the sufficient funds to build up Copenhagen again. And nobody wanted to put all their money in one building because it could burn. So the idea is, why don't we pool some of these resources, and then we can share the risk and also kind of combine the money so we have a larger pool. And then we don't want to tie our money for 20 years or 30 years, so therefore they came up with this idea of mortgage bonds, which still exist in Denmark, right? To me, that's crowdfunding anno 1797. And of course that's going to come back again. And that's why, as I think Jason was also mentioning a few times, many of these services is actually going back to the future. So going back to the roots of the financial services is where we can find many of the answers for what the customers would want in the future. The next one is going from product to services, for an airplane, it actually needs to change its engine 5, 6, 7 times during its lifetime. And one of the ones that build these airplane engines is Rolls-Royce. They do cars too, I know, but they also do airplane engines. And for the airlines, they're not really interested in owning an airplane engine. They just want to concentrate on what routes, services, and prices. And it's actually a kind of tying up a lot of the capital to have this money stuck in the engines. So why not outsource that to Rolls-Royce? Not only the maintenance of the engine, but the whole thing about the propulsion of the airplane. Then they can do economics of scales in the maintenance, they can change things. If the fuel prices go up, they can speed up the exchange of the engines, and also if they come up with a more fuel efficient engine, they can also go out and change that. So in the future with these digital services, we are able to support this. Again, the next one is trucks to tons per kilometers, because as soon as you own the truck, it becomes a hassle to have an effective use of it all the time. And you don't want it driving around empty. So why don't somebody like Volvo start selling ton per kilometer instead of selling the truck? The next one is going from pumps to dry basements. So instead of selling pumps, then maybe you can sell what it does, how it helps the customers. So I have a lawn at home, and I have a lawnmower. And all winter it's been sitting under a canvas, and now I took it out a few weeks ago, and I ran it for the first time. You know, it's always exciting to start it and see if it survived the winter. But it's not really an efficient use of rather expensive technology. So what I imagine instead in the future, we'll have a GPS-based lawnmower. It'll traverse the neighborhood. It'll go into my lawn, then it'll cut my lawn, and then it'll move over and cut the neighbor's lawn, and so forth and so on, right? So that way, I don't have to own my own lawnmower. Right? So all the capital that's tied in that, but it's also good for the environment, right? Because you know, I have tried, if it's not fuel that needs to go onto the lawnmower, then I have to go to the warehouse where I can buy these kind of stuff, right? And I go in there, and the people working there, they don't know much more than I do about lawnmowers, right? It's probably the same in Iceland. So what they say is it's going to cost you. Let's see, how much would that be? That'll be 50 euros to send it into a repair shop, and then it's going to cost another 60 euros to get somebody to give a diagnosis of what's wrong. Another 50 euros to send it back. But what I have here is a really good offer for a new lawnmower, right? And that way you will throw all these ones away. Right? And they will be thrown out, and that's not a very effective use of the lawnmower. And just imagine how many fewer lawnmowers we will have in the future with this. And that brings me to my third mega trend, and that is going from ownership to getting access. So in the future, I will not own many of these things. Instead, I just want unlimited access. Today, it's the same with the car. I don't really need to own the car. I just need unlimited access. And I don't want to, you know, book that tomorrow morning I'd like to have access to the car at 8 o'clock in the morning. It should just be available. And I think that with all these driverless cars that are coming, and I just saw that car company number 27 has now been allowed to test driverless cars in California. Right, so it's coming, and the good thing, or the interesting thing about this, is that once you've solved it for one car, you probably have solved it for all cars, right? And then it's just a question of changing this. Again, the good news is that the need for cars is going to be much less, because we don't, as a family, need to own a car each. Instead, we just need to have unlimited access, and that's what we'll get. Also with physical goods, not only the digital ones, those we already have had access to digitally for a while. So will companies survive disruption? Well, the father of the term disruption, Clayton Christensen, was not so sure. So he wrote this book called When New Technologies Cause Great Firms to Fail. And he would argue that when we see this phase shift from water over to steam, that's a paradigm shift, then most of the existing companies would fail. At least all those that used to be successful in one paradigm have been very bad in transforming their success into the new paradigm. Kodak has already been mentioned. I just want to reiterate that then when I was a kid, there would be photos taken at my birthday. That would be using a Kodak camera. There would be Kodak film in it. And if it was 36 exposures, there would be at least 2 birthdays and 2 Christmases on it, because we didn't take many pictures in those days, right? Then there would be a flash on top, and that would be a 4-1. You remember those? That was a perishable good back then. Then they would take it to a Photoshop. Photoshop is not actually, I can reveal here, is not a piece of software. It was a physical store where you could bring it. It was just across from the travel agency, and also from the post office. And then they would take this film and they would send it to a Kodak certified laboratory, where they would use Kodak chemicals to develop the film, which would be printed onto Kodak paper. Okay. At this time, Kodak is the 5th most valuable company in the world. Then Steve Sasson comes, and he's excited, right? And he's invented the digital camera, right? And then he shows it to his boss, and what will the boss say? He must share his enthusiasm? No, not really. He would say that, okay, Steve, tell me in which of these areas, 7 areas, where we are world leading and extremely profitable, will this increase our revenue? Okay, Steve had to admit that that's probably not going to be in any of those 7. So what Kodak did was they patented the camera, the digital camera, put it into the drawer, locked the drawer and threw the key away, and then sued everybody who tried to get on with this digital camera. And that was to postpone the inevitable move to a digital camera. And most companies, is my claim, would be facing the same thing. To most companies, digitalization is not lucrative. It increases the transparency of the market, and therefore it drives down the transaction costs, and therefore there's less money to be made. So you are in a situation where you have, to the right, you see a global optimum, which is unsustainable, yet very profitable, and then you have to transform your company over to a local optimum that is less, actually much less profitable, yet sustainable, right? And then you have to move through Death Valley, right? And not many managers like to move through Death Valley. So that also is another excuse to postpone this, because the bad thing, or the thing about this is that as long as you keep using IT, you're driving down the cost, and therefore you become even more profitable, right? So I don't know about in Iceland, but in Denmark, the banks have just come out with extremely good annual reports, right? They're making so much money, and that's because they're using IT to drive down cost, and that means that they're moving, you know, along this line where there's a slowly declining revenue, but the profit is going up. And we actually know something about how fast these things are going now in terms of disruption. So this is year 0, and then Napster came around. Remember Napster? You took your CD, you ripped it, you uploaded it to the Napster database for everybody else to enjoy. Obviously illegal and shut down. Then came Pirate Bay a few years later, and they would do the same with DVDs. You would rip your DVD, and then you would make it available to everybody else. Obviously illegal and shut down. And then there was Silk Road, and that was for bitcoins. There you could order a murder, you could buy guns, and you could also buy narcotics and pay with bitcoins. Also illegal. But then what happens 3 or 4 years later is that then the pure, what I would call pure digital players come around. That is iTunes. Remember iTunes? Buy one song and pay $1, right? And by the way, the success with this was what postponed Apple Music. It didn't come till last year, right? Because the success of one business will postpone the introduction of a cannibalizing business in the same area. Then we had Netflix, and then just around now we will get the pure player in terms of blockchain technology. Then 7 or 8 years later, from year 0, then his master's voice, Blockbuster, and many of the big financial institutions will also fail at this time. The thing is that if you just look at Blockbuster here, then the revenue in 2005, 5.86 billion, 5.52 billion, 5.54 billion, 5.29 billion, 406 billion, and then bankrupt. Right? That's exactly what you're doing. You're gliding down this curve, and then you come to this abyss at the end. And during that time, it's actually quite profitable to be there, but that does not mean that the abyss is not coming. It is. So what's the next big thing? I just want to show you, and it's a chatbot. A chatbot is a robot you have in your living room, and you can chat with it. So you can ask it about the weather, you can order Uber, you can order Domino's pizza, you can ask it about the weather, you can get the news and all these kind of things. And it's been actually quite a kind of dull at the dinner table in my home recently, because we cannot. When was the French Revolution? We just ask Alexa. How many people in the U.S. Congress? We just ask Alexa, and these kind of things, right? So it has actually become very ingrained in the family. And now I have 3 sons, and they all say goodbye to Alexa or good night to Alexa, as well as the robot vacuum cleaner. So this about not being able to have a personal relationship to a robot, I don't believe it. They also come out and say people will soon be talking to bots more than their beloved ones. Right? So I'm thinking every other day. That's a good. I like that idea. But the other days, I'd like to speak to my wife. And I actually brought a small video. We won't see it all. I also have to see what I'm doing on time. Can we see the video, please?
Eloise, dinner in 5. Okay. Alexa, tell me about the Amazon Echo.
Amazon Echo is a device designed around your voice that can provide information, music, news, weather, and more.
Okay, cool. Alexa, how many teaspoons in a tablespoon?
1 tablespoon equals 3 teaspoons.
Alexa, put on my Saturday playlist.
Playing your Saturday playlist.
Alexa, volume up. Alexa, who is this?
This is Weekend by The King.
Oh, not bad. Ah, good timing. Here you go. Enjoying that? Mum will be pleased. Alexa, add stir-fry vegetables to my shopping list.
I've put stir-fry vegetables on your shopping list.
Alexa, what's on my calendar tomorrow?
At 12 p.m. there's Sam's birthday picnic in the park.
Alexa, what's the weather like tomorrow?
Tomorrow, it will be sunny with a high of 25 and a low of 19 degrees.
Oh, that's lucky. Watch this.
I think that's
Alexa,
that's
tell us a joke.
Where does the polar bear keep its money? In a snowbank.
In a snowbank. All right. So that's just to give you an impression, and it really works, right? You can chat with it, right? And it works. And of course, the next step is going into financial services too. So in the US, Capital One has already done that. So you can ask it questions like, how much did I spend on Starbucks last weekend? How much did I spend on travel last year? How much did I spend on groceries? And those kind of things. You can also ask it about your current account balance, your car loan balance, and these kind of things. And the interesting thing is that we talked about earlier, that Google and Facebook and these guys, and they've been a little bit late this time, because this is Amazon that's come with this. And they built it up like an app store where they allowed third parties to develop functionality that then can be added as a skill to the chatbot. So being in technology, there's always new interesting things. So every time, we think that, wow, the Google, the Apple, these guys, the Samsungs will stay in power forever, then something like this comes up and totally upheaves the market, and we'll see new winners. There's one lady over here to the left called Amelia. She's from IPsoft, and what she can do, she also has a AI layer. And there you can actually take the text by which you are training your bank personnel, and then it can learn from that, and then it can act on behalf of the bank. If you then talk to people, who do you think they prefer to talk to? To a physical or a person in the bank, or do they prefer to talk to Alexa? They actually prefer to talk to Alexa. And I don't know if that's frightening or not, but at least that's the case. Because Amelia or Alexa, they never have a bad day. They never have, they never had a big quarrel with their beloved ones. They don't worry about the kids, and they don't mind repeating again and again. Right? The other thing is that the power distance. You go into the bank, you want to loan money to a car, and you're going to sit in front of somebody who has the power of saying yes or no. And with Alexa or Amelia, you can practice at home, right? So Alexa, what do you think is the probability that my bank will allow me to buy a car of 60,000 euros? Right, and then she can provide an answer. So SEB Bank in Sweden is working with this. They have used Alexa already for the most of the year in internal IT services, and I think that's a key learning there, is that if you guys, and you will be using this because the time from when it becomes available to becomes a competitive necessity is very short. So to kind of make it known to people working in the bank that this is somebody that they're going to be working alongside with, and it's not somebody who will come in and necessarily take all the interesting jobs in the bank. When these things are happening, then the established players, they're not happy about this, right? So, but they are the established ones, so they're able to influence the regulators and the politicians. So when the car first came around, then it was not too popular among the horse carriages and the horse drivers at that time. So they convinced the politicians to make a regulation that in front of every car there must be a guy with a whistle and a red flag. It's called the Red Flag Act. And we can laugh about that today. Right? So, but the idea is that the full potential of the automobile did not materialize because of this regulation. And it went on for years. In Pennsylvania, it was so bad that it was even so that if you would come driving in your car and you would see livestock or a horse-driven carriage on the road, you had to stop your car, push it off the road, and hide it behind the bushes until the road was clear again. So a general warning is to maybe the established players are able to position such a person in front of the digital transformation, but either that person is going to be run over, or there's going to be a digital pure player who knows a way to circumvent this. And in the end, that's also what happened. Thank you for your attention.